any metric you look at, the Saints are one of the best rosters in the NFL. If it's Pro Football Focus, if it's any other power rankings, if it's the NFL Top 100 and they got 7, if it's just the fact that no team in the NFL has won more games over the last 3 years than New Orleans, you go into the season understanding what the expectations are. And certainly that's the case for Drew Brees and certainly for Mike Thomas as well. A couple of guys who were on teleconferences over the weekend with Saints media as the Saints are beginning conditioning work now for what is coming in a few weeks with actual on-field practice work as they go through this couple-week conditioning ramp-up. And Drew Brees did address the flag controversy, but I'll get to that maybe in a bit. But this is really the first time with the local media anyway that Brees has had a chance to elaborate on the reasons he came back and what the expectations are for the season. And he did talk about, Brain, if you could, his decision to come back for this 15th season in New Orleans.
Listen, it was definitely a decision that I took very seriously, and I gave myself some time from the end of the season, and a lot of thought, a lot of prayer, a lot of conversations with my wife, with others, with mentors. At the end of the day, I chose to come back for my team.
He chose to come back for a team and also to win a Super Bowl because he said that point blank. As a matter of fact, that's what he was asked, probably point blank, about. And remember, Teron Armstead said last week, Super Bowl or bust. Drew Brees said the same.
How important for you is it to get back to the Super Bowl?
That's why I came back.
So he came back for his team, but he also came back to win a Super Bowl. Look, it's no secret. Drew Brees is playing for legacy. He's got the NFL passing touchdowns record. He's got the passing yardage record. He's won a Super Bowl. The only thing he hasn't done is won an MVP. You win a second Super Bowl, and it puts you in even rarer air, and that's what he's going for, and that's what seems to have evaded this team the last 3 years when they have been oh so close. Drew, though, now over 40 years old, how does he feel?
I feel good. I feel good. My body feels good. My arm feels live. Look forward to getting back on the field with the guys and get rolling.
He did elaborate, though, on something that has been a criticism of his game of late, which is the inability to throw the deep ball. Look, when you're over 40 years old, obviously, you're just not going to have as strong of an arm as you did. And checkdowns are going to be a part of your game, the short intermediate stuff. But Brees was asked about working with Tom House this offseason on the deep ball.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on that since March, and we've applied a lot of different techniques and a lot of different training methods. There've been some moments of discovery with us this offseason. You know, really, COVID presented a great challenge, obviously, because we couldn't go to our normal places and do our normal things, and so we had to adapt with what we were doing from a training perspective. Most of it happened in my backyard, but we discovered a few things in the process. So it was interesting that the circumstances of COVID created that. But at the end of the day, there were some beneficial things that came from that I'm hoping will pay dividends.
The video of Drew Brees in his yard, like throwing a towel, he's got like a band tied around his waist, pulling him back toward a fence, and he's like flicking a towel. He's doing what he can as of this point. That video, obviously, I'll populate up on social media. Now, another video we saw on social media earlier this offseason was Drew Brees working with Emmanuel Sanders out in Colorado. And here's what he talked about getting that work in with his number 2 wide receiver.
I flew out to Denver and spent some time with Emmanuel. So we had a good couple days together. This was back in June. So that was really valuable. So I feel great about him. And obviously he's a savvy veteran player. I think he brings a great element with his skill set as being a great guy with Michael Thomas, and I think as a great veteran presence for that room. That receiver room is still relatively young, Traquan Smith, I think, has a great opportunity this year. And I think we've got some young receivers that I'm really excited to see how they've progressed from last year to this year. Obviously you guys know how we like to move guys around and utilize all these weapons. So I think that'll be great. I was able to get a couple guys to San Diego as well and be able to work with them. So we did our best to navigate the COVID situation, but I was able to get some good work in with guys.
Speaking of Michael Thomas, Thomas said that he does think he can break Marvin Harrison's record again. Harrison's record for most catches in a season stood for 17 years. Thomas became the first player with 150 catches in a season. And he said that's what he does. He feels like he can break it again. There is no doubt that Michael Thomas is going to have another monster season. He had no help in 2019. The Saints never established a viable number 2 option at receiver. I mean, Alvin Kamara was your next leading receiver, and then Jared Cook. It was not a productive year outside of Mike Thomas for receivers. We know that. It's why Emmanuel Sanders was such a priority. But even with every defense keying on Michael Thomas, he still set the NFL record for receptions in a season. So it begs the question, one of two things. One, will the addition of Emmanuel Sanders, you bring in Adam Troutman, you hope you get Cook healthy and flourishing for a full season. Maybe that takes some pressure off of Traquan and he can emerge. Maybe one of the undrafted guys emerges this year. It's Marquez Callaway or Lil Jordan Humphrey. Maybe. We'll see. But ultimately, you feel like there's, if nothing else, at least one more guy with Emmanuel Sanders. So that should alleviate the pressure off Mike Thomas. So it goes one of two ways. Does Thomas get fewer targets because you can spread the ball around with other options? Or does Thomas get more man coverage because other guys are going to have to be accounted for? It's a pick your poison type deal. But for me, the biggest question with Mike Thomas is not this year. The biggest question with Mike Thomas is going to be, what happens when Drew isn't here anymore? Because even the greatest receivers of all time are still in some respect dependent on who is throwing them the ball. And the one that always immediately comes to the forefront of my mind is Randy Moss. Because I have this image in my head, like emblazoned into the forefront of my mind, of Randy Moss in a Raiders uniform, slouched on the bench, completely disinterested. And you know why Randy Moss was slouched on the bench, completely disinterested when he was a Raider? Because he was catching passes from Andrew Walter and Aaron Brooks. For the first 6 years of his career, when Dante Culpepper was throwing him the ball and he had Chris Carter out there as well, Moss had 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons to begin his career. In his 7th year in Minnesota would have been a 1,000-yard season as well, but he only played 13 games that year. And then he went to Oakland. In his first year in Oakland, he caught 60 balls for 1,005 yards. And then his second year in Oakland, 42 catches for 553 on a team that was 2-14. And again, Andrew Walter and Aaron Brooks. I'm not going to say it's going to get that bad for New Orleans, but my point is, even arguably the most dominant receiver of this era, or any era, in Randy Moss, saw his production whittled away. Look at Odell in Cleveland last year. The offense you're in and who's throwing you the ball matters. So, and by the way, the year after Randy Moss had that 42-catch season, he went to New England in 2007, and that worked out okay. 98 catches for 1,493 and 23 touchdowns. Worked out okay with Tom Brady throwing him the ball. My big question for Mike Thomas isn't this year. Mike Thomas is going to he'll catch another 100 balls. He'll have 1,000 yards easy. He'll catch double-digit touchdowns again. What happens when Drew's done? That's my big long-term question for Mike Thomas. We ain't going to get that answer this year. But hopefully the two of them in tandem continue to produce elite numbers. You add Emmanuel Sanders to it. You get a first-class offensive year again. You've supplemented defensively. See if this is the one. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.